All right. So, can you tell me your name, age, and where you were born?
My name's John Park. I am 54, about to hit 55, and I was born in Seoul, Korea.
And where do you grow up?
Kind of all over because my dad was a diplomat, so we moved a lot. I actually only spent about 6 years in total actually growing up in Korea. Other than that, it's in Canada, New Zealand, Singapore, then here in the States.
And more broadly speaking, what was your what was your family like?
I'm the youngest of three. It's my sister, my brother, then me. We were all together until near the end of our stay in New Zealand. And that's when our family kind of split up because my sister had to go back to Korea to start college. My brother stayed in New Zealand for one more year to finish high school and then go to Korea to go to college. And I stayed with my parents. So that was the last time we were all together. After that, we were kind of fragmented in one way or another.
So I'm guessing it was your dad's work that brought you to the United States. But what was it like living in Virginia as your first encounter with the United States?
When we moved from New Zealand to Singapore, I went to the American school in Singapore. So I started getting some introduction into American culture. And that was a bit of a culture shock for me because Americans are not New Zealanders. New Zealanders are more British, so they're a bit more reserved. And Americans were definitely not that way.
Yep.
And obviously when it came to the States, it was even more that. When I came to Washington, I was starting in my sophomore year in high school. High school just seemed very, very cliquish. And this was early 80s because in Singapore, all the Americans there, they were all expats. So they were basically all from the same economic class. So there was really no divisions there. In this high school that I went to in Virginia, seeing it there and seeing it being so stark, it was really kind of, disconcerting. I mean, I didn't fit into either class. I belonged into that pocket of, foreigner nerds kind of thing. When I started college, I was 16. And so I'm a couple of years younger than most of my classmates. Everybody ends up finding their tribe in one way or another. So I found my tribe and I sort of hung with them, but we were all, the common bond with all of us was that we were all doing martial arts. We all belonged to the same dojos. That was my tribe, and they were my surrogate family for while I was in college.
And you called these people your surrogate family. But where was were you able to keep in touch with your family as you went to college and all that? Because obviously you were there because of your dad, but everyone else was away. But just bringing it back to your family, where were they in all of this?
My father passed away during my freshman year, and I think in one way or another that kind of really fractured my idea of family even more. So my brother and sister were up in Northern Virginia, so I went to stay with them over school breaks and such. My mother was in Korea. We call on the phone. I think it made me more self-reliant. My family was people on the other end of a telephone call. So it's not feeling necessarily particularly connected.
Since then, what do you think has been your happiest moment in the United States? Because you obviously had I guess a smoother transition into the United States than mom did, or someone who might just come straight from Korea. So is there any moment in the United States from your time in the United States that stands out to you as a shining bright moment?
So I don't really feel like I sort of got back on my feet really until I actually got into my 30s. So like, people say they'd like to be younger and be in their 20s and everything again. I would never want to be back in my 20s again because I was an absolute idiot when I was in my 20s. So I would never want to repeat that. So it wasn't really until I was in my 30s that I sort of started to feel like I kind of know what's going on and I kind of know what to do. So like one of my happiest memories is, this was when you were like maybe 2.5 or something like that. It was before you started preschool. You, me, and Mom, we went on vacation. We went to California, actually to San Francisco. And we went to the Mount Tam, the state park there. And we were just walking through the redwoods and everything. You were like 2.5 years old, but you were just running through this redwood forest like you didn't have a care in the world, and you were just really happy. In a broader context, where I felt like I became happier was once I found my own family. You, me, and Mom. After I got out of the financial industry, I started teaching. I see kids there who are kind of looking for, their tribe. Some of them are really bright, but they don't really speak up very much. And sometimes it's because, they're not quite sure about how they fit into this, how they fit in with these, with their classmates. Especially if they're from first gens, or if they're from a different ethnic group, I can see them sort of being hesitant in class. So I kind of get it, because I've kind of been in a similar situation. So on the one hand, so it helps me be more empathetic with them, and I think it also helps me in terms of how I approach them. All they really need is just a safe space.
And how do you think, and like more generally speaking, like how do you think like being a teacher, and especially to a lot of first gens that come from like all over the world, like how do you think that has, how do you think that has shaped you?
Well, on the one hand, sometimes it makes me think like, was I like that, like 30 some odd years ago? When I was at Tech, being like one of a handful of Asian students in there, did I not ask questions because I felt self-conscious, because I was asking a question to begin with, and how much of that was also because I was one of the few Asian kids in there? Whoever you are, I want to make sure that you are on equal footing, okay? That you both have, a chance to really do as well as you possibly can. I know part of students feeling reticent about asking questions is there's always this kind of divide between teacher and student, but I think that becomes magnified if you come from an Asian background. Culturally, that chasm seems to be even bigger. That's one of the aspects of Asian culture that I would like to deconstruct. Okay, I want these kids to be able to feel like they can ask questions whenever they have it about whatever they have.
Is there anything like you're kind of looking forward to, like in the next like decade or so, like whether it's whether it has to do with your life or like the outside world, or like literally just anything?
You're going to be, the world is going to just explode for you, because you're going to see that the world is just so much bigger than you've experienced it before. Yes, there's going to be all kinds of frustrations along the way, but I think you're going to have such a great time. You're going to experience it in a very different way than I did, in that you're going to feel that it's completely enriching. At the ripe old age of 55, I'm kind of feeling like I'm sort of starting to get the hang of things. I still feel like a lot of times I don't quite know what I'm doing or what I should be doing, but I'm kind of getting a better idea. That's in terms of professionally, personally, with my family, in all aspects. So I'm hoping the next 10 years to be able to build on that, so that our our family life, you know, you, me, and mom, so our family life is fuller, you know, that my personal life is fuller. My name is John Park, and this is my Korean American story.